Sun in Gemini, this is where consciousness begins to move. After Taurus builds and stabilizes, Gemini comes in to question, to connect, to explore. This is mutable air. This is the energy of curiosity, perception, language, and the mind in motion. So when we're talking about individuals with the Sun in Gemini, we are talking about people who are here to experience life through information, communication, and perspective. These are the observers, the storytellers, the translators of reality. This is not energy that wants to stay still. Gemini needs movement, but not in physical movement like Aries. This is mental movement, ideas, conversations, connections, learning, teaching. If a Gemini sun is not mentally stimulated, they don't feel alive. So if you have your sun in Gemini, your entire life is about learning how to focus your mind without losing your curiosity, how to communicate your truth without fragmenting your identity, and how to gather information without becoming overwhelmed by it. Let's start with the core essence of Gemini energy. The sun represents your identity, your vitality, your ego, your sense of I am. And when the sun sits in Gemini, the statement becomes, I am what I think. I am what I understand. I am what I communicate. There is a deep connection here to the mind. Gemini is ruled by Mercury, which governs communication, perception, and processing. So these individuals are constantly observing, analyzing, and interpreting their environment. They notice everything: tone of voice, body language, subtle shifts in energy, patterns in behavior. Nothing gets past a Gemini sun when they are present. And in the highest expression, this energy is incredibly intelligent. Gemini suns are quick thinkers. They are adaptable, versatile, and able to see multiple perspectives at once. They are natural communicators, able to translate complex ideas into something that others can understand. They are also incredibly curious. They want to know how things work, why people behave the way they do, what's behind the surface of everything. This makes them lifelong learners. They are not here to know one thing deeply and stop. They are here to explore many things, to connect the dots, to gather information and share it. There's also a playful quality to Gemini energy. They bring lightness, humor, and movement into spaces. They can shift the energy of a room with their words, their presence, their ability to engage. Now let's talk about the ego. The Gemini ego is built around intelligence and communication. These individuals need to feel mentally capable. They need to feel understood. They need to feel like they can express themselves freely. And this is where the shadow begins to show, because when your identity is tied to your mind, it can become unstable. Thoughts change, perspectives shift, and information evolves. So in its lower expression, the sun in Gemini can become scattered, inconsistent, and disconnect from a grounded sense of self. This can look like constantly changing opinions, starting conversations but not finishing them, or jumping from one idea to the next without integrating anything fully. There can also be a tendency toward overthinking. Because Gemini processes everything mentally, they can get stuck in loops of analysis, thinking about what to say, how it will be received. And in doing so, they may lose connection to their intuition. Another shadow expression is avoidance. Gemini can intellectualize emotions instead of feeling them. They may talk about their feelings instead of actually processing them. They may distract themselves with information, conversations, or stimulation to avoid sitting with discomfort. This can create a pattern of emotional detachment, not because they don't feel, but because they don't stay with the feeling long enough to process it. There can also be inconsistency. Gemini energy is constantly moving, so commitment can feel restrictive. They may start things with excitement, but lose interest when the novelty fades. This can show up in relationships, in career paths, and in personal goals. Now let's talk about identity development. Gemini suns go through many versions of themselves. They are constantly learning, evolving, and redefining who they are based on new information. And this is part of their path. They are not meant to have a fixed identity. They are meant to explore. But the challenge comes when they don't anchor into anything, because if everything is changing all the time, it can create a sense of instability. So their journey is about finding a core sense of self that remains, even as their perspectives evolve, understanding that you can change your mind without losing yourself. Now let's move into relationships. Gemini suns need mental connection. Conversation is everything. If they cannot communicate with someone, if they cannot exchange ideas, if they cannot feel intellectually stimulated, the connection will not hold. They are attracted to intelligence, wit, and curiosity. They want someone who can engage with them, challenge them, expand their thinking. There is also a need for variety. Routine can feel suffocating if there is no mental stimulation. So relationships need to have movement, growth, and conversation. But the challenge comes with depth because Gemini can stay on the surface. They can talk about everything except what they truly feel. They can keep things light to avoid vulnerability. So the growth here is learning how to go deeper, not just communicating, but connecting, not just understanding others, but allowing others to understand you. Now let's talk about navigating difficult energies. When Gemini energy is out of balance, it becomes chaotic. So the first step is grounding the mind. And this is essential because if your mind is everywhere, your energy is everywhere. Practices like journaling, meditation, or even speaking your thoughts out loud can help you stay grounded. You need a place to process. Another important practice is focus, not restriction, but direction, choosing one thing to commit to for a period of time, allowing yourself to go deeper into something without constantly switching, because depth is where integration happens. You also need to connect with your body. Gemini lives in the mind, but healing happens when you bring awareness into the body. Breathing exercises, movement, anything that brings you out of your head and into your physical experience, this helps you process emotions instead of just thinking about them. Now let's talk about prevention. For Gemini suns, prevention is about managing mental energy, being mindful of what you consume, information, conversations, media, because everything you take in affects your state of mind. You also need boundaries. Not every conversation needs your energy. Not every piece of information needs your attention. Learning to filter is key. Another important practice is consistency in communication. Saying what you mean, following through on your words, being clear and direct because your words carry power. And when you are intentional with them, you create alignment in your life. Now, in its highest form, the sun in Gemini becomes a master communicator, someone who can translate ideas, connect people, and bring awareness into spaces through their words. Someone who understands that knowledge is not just for consumption, but for integration and sharing. Someone who can move between perspectives without losing their center. This is someone who uses their voice with intention, who communicates with clarity, depth, and awareness. So your life path, if you have the sun in Gemini, is about mastering your mind, not letting it control you, but learning how to direct it, turning scattered thoughts into focused insight, turning information into wisdom, turning communication into connection. And when you do that, you become incredibly powerful because your words begin to shape your reality. And that's when everything shifts.